The Emu War, Australia's feathery fiasco. Imagine this. You're a farmer struggling to feed your family after a brutal war. Crops are failing, money is tight, and then giant birds show up and start eating everything. And not just one or two birds, thousands. Fast, aggressive, and surprisingly strategic. Welcome to the Emu War of 1932, the only war in history where birds officially defeated the army. After World War I, Australia encouraged veterans to settle in the countryside and start farms. But life wasn't easy. The Great Depression hit, crops were struggling, and these new farmers were barely making ends meet. Then emus arrived, about 20,000 of them, migrating inland after breeding season. They didn't care about borders, laws, or human suffering. They just wanted your wheat. Farmers tried scaring them away with guns, dogs, fences, even chasing them with horses. Nothing worked. The emus were faster, smarter, and apparently had a better understanding of guerrilla tactics than the Australian army. The government decided the only logical solution: deploy the army. Soldiers equipped with Lewis machine guns, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and, well, a lot of hope. But the birds proved too clever. They scattered into small groups, hid behind bushes, and ran in unpredictable patterns. The soldiers tried everything, firing in lines, chasing them on trucks, even setting up ambushes. Nothing worked. Emus are apparently terrifyingly agile. Fun side note, one army report claimed that the emus were exceedingly difficult to hit. You might think this is an exaggeration, but the military eventually gave up after suffering negligible kills and a lot of wasted ammo. The operation lasted several weeks, hundreds of rounds of ammunition fired, but only a few dozen emus killed. The birds won, and they walked off, leaving the soldiers defeated and embarrassed. The Emu War is remembered as one of history's most absurd conflicts. Newspapers at the time joked about the army being beaten by birds. The War of the Oaken Bucket. When Italy went to war. Over a bucket. Imagine going to war over a bucket. Not gold, not land, not honor, just a wooden bucket. Sounds insane, right? Welcome to medieval Italy, 1325, where the cities of Bologna and Modena literally raised armies to fight over a stolen bucket. Back then, northern Italy wasn't one unified country. It was a patchwork of city-states constantly competing for power, influence, and bragging rights. Bologna and Modena had been rivals for years. Trade disputes, border skirmishes, insults at markets, you name it. Then, one day, Modena soldiers allegedly snuck into Bologna and stole a bucket from a city well. Yes, a simple wooden bucket used for drawing water. Bologna demanded it back. Modena refused, and the petty rivalry escalated into full-blown war. Both cities raised armies. Hundreds, maybe thousands of men were drafted. Knights, infantry, archers, all marching toward a battle whose spark was literally a bucket. The main battle happened near the city of Zappolino. Bologna charged, Modena defended. Chaos ensued. Soldiers fell, horses panicked, and the bucket, obviously, remained at the center of the fight, ignored, stolen, or used as a symbol of victory, depending on who you ask. Modena emerged victorious. They kept the bucket and celebrated their triumph. Bologna, humiliated, returned home, probably questioning every life choice that led to dying over a bucket. Even today, the bucket is preserved in a Modena museum, a relic of one of the silliest wars in history, and every year the city commemorates it with a festival, showing that apparently Italians really love celebrating the past. Remember, kids, never underestimate a bucket, or it might just start a war. The Pig War. Picture this. Two superpowers, the United States and Britain, staring each other down on a tiny island because of a pig. Welcome to the Pig War of 1859, one of history's strangest near wars, where a single pig could have triggered a full-blown international conflict. The San Juan Islands lie between the U.S. and British Canada. Back then, the border wasn't clearly defined, and both countries claimed parts of the islands. Tensions were simmering quietly, but no one expected a war until the pig arrived. One American farmer had a pig, This pig wandered onto the neighbor's property, British-owned land, and started eating potatoes. The farmer, understandably upset, shot the pig, and just like that, diplomacy broke down. Both sides claimed the other had crossed the border. Troops were sent, warships were deployed, everyone was ready to fight, all over one pig. The U.S. Army stationed around 450 men on the island, while Britain sent over a small contingent of Royal Marines. Both sides stared at each other across the water, tension rising. The standoff lasted weeks. Cannons were loaded. Gunboats patrolled the waters, but no shots were fired. At humans, at least. The pig had technically already been killed, but somehow it had triggered the most polite military standoff ever. Eventually, both sides realized fighting over a pig was ridiculous. Cooler heads prevailed, and the border dispute was resolved through diplomacy. The Oregon Treaty later clarified the territory. In the history of near wars, the pig war stands out because literally nobody died, except, of course, the pig, and maybe a few egos. The pastry war. Imagine this. A country sends its navy to bombard another country, all because of pastries. Not land, not politics, not taxes, pastries. Welcome to the pastry war of 1838, when France declared war on Mexico over a bakery dispute. And yes, this actually happened. In early 19th century Mexico, political instability and debt problems were rampant. French citizens living in Mexico, including merchants and bakers, claimed they had been robbed or had property destroyed by Mexican officials during unrest. One particularly vocal French pastry chef demanded compensation for damage to his shop. France demanded Mexico pay up. Mexico refused. And just like that, a diplomatic spat escalated into full-scale military action. France decided, logically, to send a fleet and bombard Mexican ports. Because nothing says, we mean business, like cannon fire over croissants. The French Navy bombarded the fortress of San Juan de Ulua and other coastal positions near Veracruz. French forces also landed troops to pressure Mexico into paying. Despite the absurdity, the Mexican military resisted bravely. There were actual casualties. Soldiers weren't fighting pastries, but the human cost was real. Meanwhile, French newspapers had fun reporting that the war started because a pastry chef couldn't get justice. The total claim for damages was 600,000 pesos, roughly equivalent to millions today, all to compensate for stolen or damaged pastries and merchant goods. Eventually, Mexico agreed to pay the demanded compensation. The war ended, but the absurdity lives on. Only in history could pastries lead to cannons, ships, and international tension. The football war, when soccer almost started a real war. Welcome to the football war of 1969, a bizarre and tragic conflict between El Salvador and Honduras, sparked in part by a soccer game. The real story starts with deep social and political tensions. Honduras and El Salvador were neighbors with long-standing disputes over land, immigration, and economic inequality. Tensions boiled over when hundreds of thousands of Salvadoran immigrants settled in Honduras, causing resentment among locals. Meanwhile, both countries were politically unstable, with fragile governments and rising nationalism. Enter soccer, the 1970 FIFA World Cup qualifying matches. The teams played in June 1969, but fans and media fanned the flames of nationalistic anger. Riots broke out during and after the matches, turning stadiums into battlefields. The situation escalated quickly. On July 14, 1969, El Salvador launched a military offensive into Honduras. Tanks rolled, planes flew, and thousands of troops clashed, all triggered in part by football tensions. The war lasted 4 days. Around 2,000 people were killed, tens of thousands displaced, and cities in both countries suffered damage. FIFA did nothing. There were no red cards, no penalties, just a full-blown conflict sparked by a combination of politics, land disputes, and national pride, with soccer as the spark. The Organization of American States brokered a ceasefire on July 18, 1969. The war ended officially, but the tensions lingered for years. Historians still call it the football war, even though soccer was only a partial cause. These are the type of videos I'm going to be making. Subscribe if you'd like to see more!